It ended up sitting at my house, not painted. I pulled the engine out. I was going to chrome the engine, do all this stuff, and I really just I got married, had a child, bought a house, and it just sat in the garage.
How dare
And,
you let life get in the way of a truck?
oh, that's the one that got away because I want to build. I want me and my son to build another Ranger just like that. Um, hopefully, God willing, I'll get to do that before I check out of this place. But I would love to do that just for nostalgic reasons.
What's up, guys? We're back with another episode of Modified Rides Podcast. Today, I have one of the main guys behind Lonestar Throwdown, Lonnie Ford. What's going on, Lonnie?
How you doing?
Me and Lonnie's been trying to get on to record. He has a lot going on. Not only does he do Lonestar Throwdown, he also has, which is it'll happen right after this episode's dropped, is Classic Truck Throwdown. So you seem to
Yep.
be tied up with trucks pretty much.
Yeah, it seems that way. You would think that LST would be enough for us, but we decided to do something a little bit different. So we did classic truck throwdown. So that's coming up next weekend, and we're gearing up for it right now. We're getting some stuff ready for it, and it's going to be here before we know it.
Now, what is that? What year breakdown is that?
With that one, we do like a 25-year rolling scale. So this year it's 1999 and older.
How is a 1999 25 years already? Like, are we that
I
old?
trust me, trust me. When I look at it and I'm like, a 1999, because even like my expedition, because I put that in there, and you would look at that and not think that it's a classic, but it is. I mean, I'm able to get in Texas. I can get classic plates for it.
Wow.
I
What,
know, and you wouldn't think that when you automatically think classic truck, you think of a '70s
60s or 70s?
C10 or F100 or something like that, which I do have. I have a few of them, but that's what you automatically go to. You don't think of a 88 to 98 as being a classic truck now.
Now, what year's Good Guys letting in now?
I want to say they go all the way up into like the 98s.
Wow. Well, I guess we're going to start listening to our high school music on the classic channels here before long, if this is what we're getting into.
Hey, we're the hot rod guys now. We're the old guys that we used to make fun of. We're now those old guys.
Yep. So let's get into who Lonnie Ford is. How did you get into modified rides? How did you get into playing with vehicles?
Man, I initially was like a hot rod guy. My dad was a old hot rodder. 55 Chevy with the gutted interior, no bumpers on it. Had the air shocks in the back or the lifted up in the back to go racing on the weekends, and that was what I was heading towards. I was going to get a Camaro. I wasn't a Ford guy yet. I wanted a Camaro. I was going to buy a late '70s Camaro with nitrous on it, and it just kind of went to where it all goes back to right before uh, I was going to buy a vehicle. We were at the bus stop, and a hard body went by and had the old center lines on it with the holes,
Yeah.
and were poking out, had little bitty tires on it, and he drove by and he tilted the bed. And I just remember it sitting at the bus stop going, what is that? I want that. Like, and that's where it kind of sold me. And I wanted a Nissan truck, but I couldn't afford it. So I found a Datsun. And my first truck was a 1983 Datsun. Still had, remember on the bed where they still had the bed hooks on it, where the
Yeah.
beds weren't smooth yet.
Is that the round Datsuns, or is that when they went to square? That's still the
That's like
round ones, wasn't it?
it's like the 720s.
Okay, so it's a square.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it's still square. And then the bed, it was right before they went to the smooth bed sides where they still weren't. It still said Datsun on it. It hadn't. Some of them said Datsun and said by Nissan,
On the
like
bottom corner,
on
yeah.
the bottom corner. And then after that, they went to Nissan, and then they had the smooth bed. Because for me, I wanted to change my bed out and put the smooth bed on it because I always hated the hooks. You wanted it smooth. But I ended up getting a king cab, an extended cab, Datsun, tilt bed, lowered it, had house speakers in the extended cab part of it. Like it was the total, you know, 80s mini truck. That's that we got a hydraulic pump off of one of those lift trucks and hooked it up, welded a bracket up underneath of it, put some hinges in the back. And even before that, when I could afford to get the hydraulic pump, what we would do is when we would go cruise, I had already had the hinges on it. So we went and got a piece of all thread, and we would put a piece of all thread in the front of the bed. So I would lift the bed up, put the piece of all thread, and then you put a nut on there to hold it so it doesn't fly off. And we would literally drive around all that weekend with a piece of all thread in there to have our bed tilted up.
Was that your first vehicle?
First vehicle.
So your very first vehicle was a custom mini truck.
Absolutely. And I was hooked. And so after that, I ended up getting hit by a drunk driver, totaled out the truck, and the finance company for that one, they were going to switch the loan to another truck if I could go back to that same dealer and find another truck that was equal that value, that they would just switch the loan.
Yeah.
So and at this point, I'm not a Ford guy. Like my dad, I mean, my dad died when I was 3 years old. So I've really always heard stories about my dad about he was Chevrolet like nonstop, like he was a Chevrolet
Ford.
guy, and I wanted a Chevrolet. I was a Chevy. I just consider myself a Chevy guy. So we go back to the dealership, and there's nothing there. There's not a Nissan. There's not a mini truck. There's not even full sizes. There's nothing. So they had a Ford Ranger, and that's the only thing that was in my price budget that was a mini truck that I could afford that they would switch it for. So I get it. Brandon, I hated this truck. I'm like, I don't want a Ford Ranger. This is stupid. It's a Ford. My
Square
dad
body.
be rolling over in his grave. It's a 1986 extended cab Ford Ranger.
So square
And,
body.
yep. So I get it. I bring it home, and I literally was a little shithead kid. I was mad because I had to settle for this Ford Ranger, and I beat on that truck. I beat the hell out of it, and it was the best truck that I ever had. And that truck, the Ford Ranger, is the reason why now I'm such a Ford freak. Like I'm nothing but Ford. Everything that I collect, everything that I have is all Ford.
So
And
is Ford your original name, or did you have that legally changed because of
no,
that?
that's my original name because everybody gave my dad a hard time for it because he was such a Chevy guy, and for him to have the last name Ford.
Nice. So what if you had the tilt bed and everything on the Nissan? What was the first thing you did to the Ranger?
It was tilt bed. So we did the hinges on it, did the all thread on it, and we ended up, those were really hard back then to lower.
Oh yeah.
So we did the cut coils, we did the tires leaning like crazy. So we even had a guy that would heat them up and bend them. So that's what we did at first. We heated up, we bent them, and then Rancho had drop I beams for it. So I bought the first set of, had them painted white because the truck was white. So I had those painted white. At that time, I was working, making pretty good money for that time era.
Yeah.
So man, I started getting chrome stuff. Like I was going crazy with it. So I ended up getting and the wheels that were on it were the 5-star white Renault wheels. but they're actually eagles. So what I did is back then, I don't know if you're familiar with like super shops.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So super shops was around. So I go to super shops, I buy the eagles, and I don't want to put the eagle cap on it. So I go down to it's like an import place, and I buy the Renault center caps for it, and I put them on, even though it's not going to have that print of it. But back then, people didn't even know. They thought I had Renaults. Even to this day, everybody was like, "Yeah, you had the white Renaults." Actually, they weren't Renaults; they were Eagles.
Well, false
So
advertising.
yeah, so I put that center cap on there and lowered it. Had house speakers in the extended cab because we were all about filling up the back of the truck with speakers, and ended up putting a tilt bed on it, and we had that for you know a few years, and then I ended up wanting to shave everything. So kind of at the same time, I redid all the interior. Back then, it was tweed.
Yep.
Well, I need to roll this back. So first in the truck was velour. So it was
Oh.
vinyl and velour with the piping. And then second came the tweed.
And what year was
But
this?
this would have been, I was in high school, so it would have been 89. Yeah, it would have been 89 and 90. And
Now,
then,
you talk about the house speakers. Kids nowadays don't understand. They see the little Bluetooth speakers. No, back in the day, we had these big, massive boxes and 15s and, the big stack stereo stuff. Now everything's the size of your phone and it sounds just as good. But no, we all had the house speakers that would shake the neighbor's house.
yep, yep. So that's what I had in the back, in the extended cab of the truck. And eventually, when I redid the interior, well, at that point, after the velour, I ended up getting a truck painted, and I wanted turquoise. So I wanted, at that time, it was the brightest flamboyant color that you can get was what you wanted. So I ended up getting
Do you,
turquoise. And
do you
go ahead.
remember what that paint job cost back then, though?
Yes, I do. It was $1,700, and
God.
it was $1,700 to shave everything: emblems, turn signals, door handles, cab light. I
Plus,
shaved the what?
and the paint.
And the paint.
You couldn't buy the clear for that truck for that kind of money now.
Nope. It was 1700. The place was called B&R, and it was like the initials from the two guys that owned it.
Yeah.
And they were in the kind of the not truck scene, but they were in the car scene. And I took it to them, and when I took it to them, when I told them what I wanted to do, they were all for it. They were like, "Oh man, this is great. You want to shave all this stuff?" And I'm like, "Yes, I want to shave the tailgate. I want all the bed stake holes. I want shaved." So a complete color change, door jambs, and doing all the body work was $1,700.
Wow.
And even the interior, I redid the whole interior, and redid the speaker box, and it was $800. And that was, to me back then, it was like I couldn't believe I spent $800 on this interior.
Yep.
And back then we were doing all the billet accessories, but you couldn't buy it. So we had a friend of ours that he worked for a machine shop. So that's why I still have them, and I'll send you some pictures of them. But my pedals, the window cranks, so they were little circles that were stainless steel. Machine parts. So we machined all stainless steel machine parts that would go on. So my door crank or my window crank was a knob that you rolled.
Wow.
And it's all handmade. So back then, and even on the pedals, that was all handmade. I still have the pedals because that's something that I didn't want to throw away. I was like, I'm keeping this forever because I still look back on it and think about how big that was back then. No one had that. No
Yeah.
one had that stuff.
Well,
No one made it, especially for a Ford Ranger.
you think if you spent $800 on that interior, well, now guys are spending $30,000 to $100,000 on interior.
It's crazy.
Like, I miss those days. Can we go back to those days at least for the
Yeah,
box?
but when you're saying $30,000 interior, It's a pretty nice interior though.
But yours is probably pretty nice for that time back then too. I did the same thing with the Tweed.
Yeah, I look back on it and I'm like, oh my god, velour! Like you look at this velour and this vinyl with the piping. I look at the piping, I was like, it looks like a jet boat.
Well, I know we used to all go down to the foam and fabric store, and we'd cruise the tweed section and figure out what color we wanted, and then is $4.99 a yard. You could do a whole vehicle for less than $100 with glue and everything. So yeah, you
Yeah,
pay more.
well, we ended up after that. Well, so between the velour and the interior and the paint job, and then getting it redone. So at that time, there was no really adjustable suspension stuff. So what we would do is the truck was so low. I always tell this story. So Bill Carlton with Extensive,
Yeah.
me and him ran around back then because we would always go to after Trendsetters because we were all in Trendsetters together. And once Trendsetters was over, we still met up on Wednesday nights. We still hung out. We still went up to the mall and stuff like that. And mine and his truck was so low that everybody talks about those frames that he went through, wearing through the frame, just dragging all the time. And those Ford Rangers have the big drop down bracket for the transmission
Oh
and then
yeah.
the radius arms. So I would just change in lanes. I would knock the road dots off the road just by changing the lanes. That's how low it was.
Static.
Yep, static. So after tearing everything up, L.A. Dave in Louisiana was making relocator kits for all of it. So I took my truck to him. We were going to a show. I took it to him, and he put those brackets on there, the radius arm relocator. So it gave me more room to get it lower. So when we made it lower, it caused, just like anything else, it made it a lot worse suspension wise. The wheels caved in more. So we took those Rancho beams and tried to bend them. Well, those were the ones that were the tube beams. So heating it up and trying to bend them and all that, they were trying to bend or put a, I guess you would say, like a dent in them.
Yeah.
So it was stretching the metal, and they weren't like the factory ones where it's like an I beam where you can really heat it up and bend that I beam. So we were scared they were going to end up messing up. So what we did is there's a lowrider place, and I went and I was like, look, I want to get hydraulics, because I'm so tired of not having the adjustability. So I was like, let me get front hydraulics on this thing. So what we ended up doing is getting front hydraulics on it, and where I could just lower it all the way to the ground and then pick it back up, and it was still had the cup and the hydraulic cylinder on the top plate on the Ranger, and I still kept the same beams. I just cut more of the coil, and then in the rear, what we did is it already had a notch. So in the rear, we put air shocks on it because we try to do air shocks on the front end. But what happened is when we cut the coil, the air shocks, you couldn't get enough pressure to lift it up,
Yeah.
lift the weight of the truck. The rear, you could. So the rear, I had air shocks, and in the front, I had hydraulics. And then it just got to the point where it was kind of right before that time I wanted to get hydraulics all the way around now because I liked the front so much. I was like, okay, let me do the rear. So we had the rear cut out and all that, and I ended up doing, two pumps, four batteries. I even had the little whammy tank with the plexiglass. I put the ducks in it. I put the little boats in it where you can see the boats inside of the fluid. Uh,
Yep.
we did all of that stuff, and then I got on at that time Discover credit card was just come out, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get a credit card, and I'm really gonna get a bunch of chrome for this thing. So I ended up getting a credit card, and I was young.
Been there, done that.
Maxed the credit card out on chrome. So I chromed everything, nuts, bolts. I had the truck, and I'll send you a picture. It's up in my mom's garage with everything ripped out from underneath of it.
I
Like I
feel there
chrome.
was more chrome shops back in the day than there are now.
I don't know. There's still chrome shops, especially around here in Houston. I don't know if it's because it's a industrial type, a bigger city,
I know
but
I sent all my stuff for my Honda off somewhere. It might have been down in Texas I sent it to.
yeah. No, there's still chrome shops, but it's still big in the lowrider scene. You know what I mean? But now it's powder coating and stuff like that, which is a
Yeah.
little bit more durable. Well, I guess I can't say durable, but you can get different colors and
Yeah.
all the stuff like that. Because I did have some problems with chroming. I chrome my aluminum blocks. Like anything that we did aluminum ended up cracking just because of the flex and just because of bolting it on. Anytime you put a nut, you take it back off, it left a mark in the chrome. Like it was a lot of stuff like that. And then surface rut, because back then I was still driving it. I mean,
Yeah.
this wasn't no, even though a lot of places we did trailer it to that was far away, but I still drove this truck, drove it in the rain, drove it to work. I still drove it.
Well, you don't have
Uh,
snow down there like we do up here, so
no, no, we have a lot of rain though.
and heat.
Yeah, heat. But you know, back to that. So I ended up doing all of that chrome stuff, all of that, and then it kind of worked out where uh, um, Charles came down from California, and he had his Toyota. Gendro had body dropped his Toyota, and he come rolling up to the shop, and it looked already body dropped, and it was all the way up. He come pulling in the parking lot. All of us, our jaws were on the ground. And at that moment, I was like, I'm body dropping my truck. I want my truck like that. So I ended up sending my truck back to LA Dave in Louisiana, and he did a 4.5 inch body drop on it,
And when
which
was this?
this would have been uh 94. And I have to go back. We're probably 94. I was already graduated. So it was probably 94, maybe 95.
So that was still early in the body drop days. Like I know the drop shop was the Ranger King, Jody, but I don't think he was really diving into it at that point, was he?
No, there were a few of them. It was far in between. There was only, like, if I went to a show, I was the only body drop truck there. Like there wasn't many of them. Like later on, 5 years after that, there was body drop. Everybody was body dropping their trucks.
But a standard or a traditional body drop on a square body Ranger back then, you probably didn't have much room in that cab, did you?
No, sir. I would have to take off. We at the shop you have to have steel toes. So my boots, I would always have to take my boots off to drive the truck because my feet wouldn't. Because the dash on that thing comes down, and you think about a 4.5 inch body drop. I mean, the floor was at the pedals.
Yep.
So, and then the seat, I ended up getting different seats. We ended up getting Honda seats and then mounting them to the floor, which gave you more room. And then I wasn't as big back then, but I was still, 6'3" and still a big guy, a big,
You're all
tall
hunched
dude.
over trying to.
Well, the seats helped out tremendously. So it gave me a lot more room. And it being an extended cab, I can have the seat further back.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I ended up doing that, and then ended up wanting to change up the truck, and that's where I ended up primering. A lot of pictures, it's primered at that point, and it was that K200, kind of that yellowish looking primer, and then we took like some um, orange, because I was going to end up painting the truck orange because all the interior was trimmed out. The speakers, I ended up doing a walkthrough, so I cut through the bed, put speakers in the bed. I put 415s in the bed, and then redid the interior and had like a tan tweed, tan seats, and
You had
uh,
a you had a shell on that truck.
no, I never had a shell.
Oh, you just did a walk through with like a tonneau cover or like a
Yep,
big blow through or whatever.
yep. And then so I ended up doing that, and I got to the point where Not that I lost interest in it, but I got tired of it. And it ended up sitting at my house, not painted. I pulled the engine out. I was going to chrome the engine, do all this stuff, and I really just I got married, had a child, bought a house, and it just sat in the garage.
How dare
And
you let life get in the way of a truck?
ah, that's the one that got away because I want to build. I want me and my son to build another Ranger just like that. Um, hopefully, God willing, I'll get to do that before I check out of this place. But I would love to do that just for nostalgic reasons. I would love to do that with him. I think it'd be pretty cool. And going kind of fast forward a little bit, but I actually found the truck, but I ended up selling it and sold it without the engine in it or anything like that. And the guy really, they own a car lot, and he took the truck, put the engine back because I had the engine rebuilt and everything. So he put the engine in it, and then they painted the truck white. And then you'll see some pictures of it, and the truck's painted white. Now that was after I had sold it. So he had it for a while, and I was gonna buy it back because at that point I was kind of like, I can't believe I sold it. Now that it's painted a different color and everything, I wanted to get it back and paint it orange and finish it the way that I wanted. But
Yeah.
I ended up not. It changed hands a couple of times, and then it just disappeared and hadn't seen it forever. And then a few years ago, someone had tagged me in something on Facebook, and it was a picture of it at a junkyard.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I posted a video. I went to the junkyard,
Oh, so it was
found it in
still
the
local.
junkyard. The what?
It was still local.
So local that it was about 15 minutes from my house.
Wow.
Yep. So the story goes, it was at a apartment complex, abandoned. They had busted out the windows in it, been rained in, so the apartment complex had it towed. So it got towed, got sent to this lot, and it was like a pull apart type thing.
Yeah.
So I go there, I go in there, I film it. I posted a whole YouTube video on it of me finding it, and I got the Ford probe wheels because going back on the Renaults that I had on there when I body dropped it, I ended up getting the um, like the Dodge or the Mitsubishi Eclipse like little 5-star wheels.
Fan wheels. Yeah.
Yep. So I ended up getting those and got them chrome. So I had chrome wheels on it. Or no, it was a what did they call them? It was the Dodge like 3000. Yeah, Dodge 3000.
Mitsubishi.
Yeah, well the Dodge had one too, and it was called the 3000
Yeah.
GT or something like that.
The
It,
Stealth and the 3000 were the same thing.
yeah, and then the wheels that I ended up getting on the truck there was Ford probe wheels. So we ended up, but Ford Probe wheels wouldn't fit. So they were the fan type wheels.
Yeah.
So in the Ford Probe wheels, I ended up cutting the centers out of them so they could bolt up. So
Yeah.
we
The
ended up
bore
putting
wasn't
those
big
on
enough
there.
on those.
The what?
The bore wasn't big enough on those
Yeah,
wheels.
so it wouldn't go, it'd go on the rear, but not the front. So we ended up having it machined out on the inside of it. And then I had those chromed. And those wheels were still on it at the junkyard. So I took them all. It had locks on them, but I broke the locks off of them at the junkyard and bought back because it was a pull apart. So I bought the wheels and tires off of it. The tires were junk, but I bought the rims. It still had my stainless uh, gear shifter that I had custom made for it on there. And a lot of people thought it was made onto the shifter. All it did was slid down the shaft. So all you had to do, it was just kind of stuck on there. So I wiggled it a couple times. It came off. I put it in my cart. They had some stereo amps in there. I took those. I'm trying to think what else. There's a few other things that I took off of it. And so I ended up buying, it was only like $200 that I paid for all of that stuff, but I wanted it off that truck. I tried to buy the truck, but the way that the I guess the state does it is they send in the title to the state, and the truck can't be sold as a whole. It has
Ah,
to be everything taken off of, and then a certain amount of time, and then they just crush the truck. And when the more I looked at it, the more stuff was wrong with it. Like when they picked it up, they pick it up with the forklift, like they hit, and it's body dropped. So you got to think the body is like under the frame. So when they picked it up, they screwed the bottom of the cab, they hit the bed, they hit the front end, and at that point, remember, my fenders was welded to the cab, to the cowl.
ah,
The bottoms was welded to the rockers. The front, on the Fords has that where the turn signals are. There's a
yeah,
panel on the front that
yeah.
was welded on. So my front clip was one clip, and it's welded to the cab. So to take the front end off of that truck, you'd have to take the cab off. So all of those things are cracking because of the way that they're lifting them up. So to redo that truck would have costed more money than it was worth.
Yeah.
And I just had to of course I couldn't get it, but I had to release it and just walk away with it with the wheels, a couple of amps, and my gear shifter.
So what? So when you didn't pick that up, what was your next project?
I ended up when I sold that truck, I got a I was into the lifted stuff. So in a lot of the pictures that you see where the truck is parked under the 95 F350, I had 44 boggers on it, had over 20 inches of lift on it, crew cab long wheelbase. That's what I was into. So I ended up buying that from a guy, Duke, out of Austin.
I,
And
I
just,
I didn't know you was into the lifted stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, so I had that, and even at that time, I put 44 boggers on it. Like I lifted it up more. I started cleaning it up, changing the tailgate. It had a sliding rag in it, and I had that for a good while. And then I was going through a divorce, and I was like, "Why am I driving this truck?" Because that was my daily truck that I drove, and I'm driving this crew cab F350 long wheelbase with 44 boggers with over 20 inches of lift. And it's just hard. I mean, it's hard to drive. You just kind of life got into you. And I was like, you know what? I want something lowered again, but I want something that I can put my daughter in. It could be kind of like a family car. So I ended up that's when I got the Ford Expedition. So
Okay.
I sold that truck, the F350, and I got a 99 Ford Expedition. And of course, I get it. I lower it, put a supercharger on it. That wasn't enough, so that I ended up bagging it, cutting out the rear. Had 20s on it at first, and then the 22s were coming out with the stall flip. And I was like, oh my God, but to put the 22s on it, I was going to have to rebag the truck because it hit the fender wells. But I still did it anyway because the look was a lot better. So I ended up putting 22-inch Boyd Cottitons, the Tycoons. And those are those 5 bar that has the knurls cut in them.
Yeah.
And I ended up putting those on there, doing stereo all to it, doing some paint work to it, and I had that for quite a while.
But so you've had that for a while if that's the same one you have now.
No, actually, what's funny is everybody thinks my white one is the burgundy one painted. That is not true.
Wow.
So the burgundy one that I originally had is um, at that time, Locomotive was the guy, and Bobby McMillan. He's the one that bagged my truck. And when he bagged it, right after he bagged mine, he did a 2000, which is that white one that I have now.
Okay.
And that was Jerry's truck. And me and him ran around everywhere. Wherever you saw my burgundy one, you saw his white one. So we were always together, and it has the same wheels on it now that were originally on it, the Colorado Customs.
So
But
you're in Camber, right?
correct,
So when did Camber come into play? Which vehicle did it come in, or is that
that was
later?
the Ford Ranger.
Okay.
Yeah, I got in Camber in '95, so it was turquoise. It was going way back then to the '95, because that is going way back to when I got in Camber, because we were in Trendsetters for a long time. And then after Trendsetters, when Trendsetters went away, I ended up just kind of going to everybody's truck meet still, and hangouts. I
Yeah.
was never really into a club or anything. So I ended up getting Charles with the Body Drop Toyota Booger. He was the one that was like, "Hey man, I'm in this truck club." And the funny story is, I was actually in Relaxed Atmosphere first. And I was in Relaxed Atmosphere for a very short period, but there was no one around here. No one was in Relaxed. The closest people were hours away from me.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting out of there, and we were at Heatwave, and Courtney came to me, and he was like, "Man," he goes, "you should be in Camber." He goes, "I want you in Camber." And I was like, "I don't know if I want to be in the club." And when I drove off, I was hitting it, because at that time it's body dropped, and I still have the 10 switches. So I'm side to side in the truck, and when it's side to side, it's dragging the cab of the truck. So he comes over there and he throws a sticker in my seat, and he was like, "Put the sticker on this truck." So at that point, that's when I ended up getting in Camber. It was actually at Texas Heatwave back in the day, and it was in 1995.
That yeah, that was I'm trying to think 95. I think that's before I even did the Slam Impression stuff. And then, we lost a few of the Slam Impressions guys, Wes and Mike Rash and stuff to go to Camber.
Yeah,
So I think that was probably 2000 ish. So yeah, I mean, for you to be back then. So I was wondering where that fell through, because I've only seen you with the expedition stuff, so I didn't realize that the Ranger is what got you in with that.
yeah, I had it on the Ranger, and then in NC it's one of those things where you initially get in with a bag truck or a lower truck at well, with mine it was a juice truck because it was on hydraulics.
Yeah.
But after that, my jacked up F-350, I ran a NC logo on it, because after that, after you're in, you can run the logo on cars or anything,
Yeah.
but you initially have to get in with the truck.
And then you're branded for life, right?
Yeah. So it ended up just with that, and then the expedition, and then after the expedition, I ended up getting a F-150. I had a couple of F-150s, and at that time, the Butnicks were real big. So I was a real big stiletto guy. I loved the wheels with the bars with the holes cut in them.
Oh, I thought you meant the shoes. I thought you were a
Well, the
stiletto.
shoes on the truck, but it was a
You didn't
Butnick
wear
stiletto.
stilettos around.
Yeah, so I ended up getting those, and they were 17s, and to me 17s were like, "Oh my god, they're so big."
Yep.
And that was a 90. Oh, that truck was a 91, and then I ended up getting a 95, or no, I'm sorry, a 96. So I ended up getting a 96 single cab black, single cab short wheelbase 2 wheel drive F-150, and that's the one that we put beams on. C Dodge put the 17 Butnicks on, and I had that for, oh shit, I had that for quite a while, and all of that is before the F-350, because after the F-350 was the Expedition. And
Gotcha.
some of these kind of overlap, because some of them I had both of them. Like I had the Expedition in the big truck, and then I had the Ranger in the big truck. Like some of them overlap each other, where I had multiple of them at one time, and then sold it later on just to, recoup that money, because it just set, just like the Ranger. The Ranger was just sitting in the garage. My focus was on something else.
When did your current project come into play?
Um, I guess that would be 2011.
That's what,
You're
Schlong.
talking about the F100, my
Yeah,
goal.
yeah.
That came in 2011, and I've always, at this point, after I do the expedition, I sold the expedition, and then I got back into the Super Duty stuff. So I bought a 2007, 2007 F250, and I ended up putting 22s on it, doing 12 inches of lift and doing the lifted stuff again. And after that truck is when, because I sold the expedition, and then I got the 2007 F250, jacked it up, put 22s on it, and did the big knobby tires, and I had stereo in it, and then I ended up selling that one. And then after that, I didn't really have anything except for right when I sold it, I had bought the F100.
Okay.
And I really didn't know the plans at that point because I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew that I wanted it, and the opportunity came up to buy that truck. And it was a friend of LA Dave. And I always go back to LA Dave, but our paths always were crossing and together. And we ended up getting that truck, and it set stock for probably a year. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna back half this truck. I wanted to, because at that point, when I get the F100, the big wheels are here. Around me, especially in Texas, you have to have a 24x15. So I just wanted to back half it, put a little small block in it. It already had a small block in it, a 302, but I wanted to put a little healthy 302 in it, back half it, 24x15s, and just have it bagged. But it just snowballed in the back half. Then it was like, okay, I'm going to 3/4 it. Then it's like, might as well full frame it. And then it just got way out of hand.
So you're going to finish that this year? Is that what we're hearing?
I've finished it like 3 times. Well, I ended up getting that. I had some problems, and then I wasn't going to finish it. I was like, you know what? I'm so tired of working on this thing, problem after problem. So I ended up getting a full frame built for it. So I built a full frame, and at this time, I started building another engine. So I wanted a fully built, nice engine. So I ended up doing a built 351 that ended up being a 440, and that's the 440 that was in it now. I have another engine that I'm building for it because I have the other F100, and
Well, the
I'll
engine
get
that's in
into
it
that in a minute.
now, the engine,
What?
the engine that's in it now is pretty nasty, though.
Yeah, well, this new one is a is this new one is a 454. It's a 351 Ford small block, but it's stroked to a 454.
Wow.
And it has Hemi heads. Like it's one of those that I originally was going to build the first time, and it just never worked out. So we ended up doing the 440. And if any Ford guys out there, they're going to know what I'm talking about. But you do anything exotic with the Ford, it takes time and it takes a lot of money. Like it's just everything is so friggin' expensive, and I want it to be naturally aspirated. I want it to be an old mechanical engine. I didn't want a Coyote engine in it. I didn't want something that I love and it's not knocking the twin turbo with all the new model stuff. I just wanted it to be, you can't get the old mechanical feel. Like when
Yeah.
that truck's running, you feel it.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I want. I don't want, it's a 640 like naturally aspirated horsepower. Like it is not wait for the turbos to kick in or anything. It's like you hit the throttle, and it definitely makes you respect it, and that's what I love about it.
Well, I guess the next thing, let's get into Where did Garage Gear clothing come from? How did that fit into the mix of all your toys?
All the toys and everything. Well, Garage Gear came in after, so really LST comes in before Garage Gear.
Okay, so let's get into that then first.
Yeah, so really at that time that I'm building the 75, the F100, Todd and I, which is Radar. I still call him Todd. Everybody, I say Todd, and they're like, "Who's Todd?" And I'm like, "It's Radar." But I've known him so long, he's still Todd to me. But Radar and I, we've been friends since we were in high school. So we've been in Trendsetters together. So I've known him for that whole length of time, and we've always went to shows. And we've been to shows all over the place. And we've always talked about, you know what? We ought to do a show. We ought to do a show. We just kind of always, just jokingly, always say that. And then it ended up coming about that when Brandon had Gator Drag and he moved to Texas, Brandon did Gator Drag where LST is at the Montgomery County Fairgrounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Gator Drag was there. So he had Gator Drag there, and then the next year he moved it back to Louisiana.
What's his
So
last name? LeBlanc or
yeah,
whatever.
LeBlanc.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So when he moved it, when Todd and I, several years later, we're sitting there and it comes up, and we were supposed to do the show in 2010. But the first LST didn't happen until 2012.
Okay.
So 2010 comes, and it's like life is going, work is going. Radar has his own stuff going on, and we didn't do it. 2011 came down, and at this point, we're Radar and I both have businesses outside of this, so we had to come into this. If we're going to do a show, it has to be legit. It has to have, an LLC. It has to have a formation, because we can't jeopardize what our livelihood is.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing is going in. We got the license. We got everything going for us, but it was just like doing it, like going out and doing it, and trying to figure out what the hell we're doing. I mean, we still, people think we know what we're doing. We still don't know what we're doing. We've winged it from day one, and I say we're really good at trying to fix what happened the previous year. And I always say I just want to be better than I was last year, and if I can continue to do that, and I think me and you've talked about this already, but I just want to be better than I was last year. I don't
Yeah.
want to compete with nobody. I don't want to. I've never wanted LST to be the biggest. I never wanted it to be the greatest. I just wanted it to be the best LST. I wanted it to be one of those shows that, when Todd, or when Radar and I were going to shows, the only shows for us to go to was like rod runs, hot rod shows, little meetups, and these little nifty 50s, and all these little hot rod things. And we're mini truck guys, and me and him talked about, we wanted to do a show that was for everybody. Like, you could be a low rider, you could be a rat rod, a hot rod, a race car, a lifted truck, a mini truck, a sport truck. Like, I wanted every type of person, group,
Yeah.
and vehicle to be there. Import. Hell, I think one year your wife got the import award for
Yeah.
LSD.
For
Like,
with
I
Red Bottom
love,
WRX. Yeah.
yeah, I love having the mix of all that, and then that's kind of where it comes in. LST comes in as we start this event. We don't know what the hell we're doing, and 2011 rolls around, and Tito, and this is when Tito's still alive, and he hits us up and he tells both of us, he was like, "Y'all need to shit or get off the pot. Like, what are y'all doing? Are y'all going to have this show? What are y'all going to do?" So he's like, "Look, our anniversary is coming up. So the 20-year anniversary was coming up on 2012." And he was just like, "The what? Yeah.
Or negative camera. Yeah.
Yep." So he was like, "Hey, let's do the party there. Let's have our anniversary there, and y'all do the show." So that kind of pushed me and Radar to now we have to have it. Now we really have to get down and have to have this show. So I have to give credit to Tito pushing us, saying, "Hey, let's get the show going," and that's where we ended up having our first event was in February of 2012, and I was still scared because at this time I'm not a beggar. So in to do a show, people don't realize you got to go out and get sponsors. You have to go out and beg people to be a sponsor for your event.
Yep.
It takes a lot for these events, and without it takes a mix of everybody. And I've learned my lesson. It takes participants, it takes sponsors, it takes vendors, and it takes spectators. And then with all of that, it still takes a whole team behind it, your staff and us to
You,
do everything to make it work. And then it's still not a guarantee that it's going to work.
you know,
And
you mentioned Courtney like pushed you to do it. What's funny is your episode number 22, and he's been brought up in probably 15 of the 22 episodes that I've had.
well, think about it. He was a, I consider him a legend in any of that stuff. And it wasn't just mini truck stuff. You think about what he's touched, you know,
Bikes, sound
everything,
system magazines, everything.
hot rods,
Yep.
like everything. So, I think once he pushed us to do it and we ended up having it, I was a nervous wreck. Everybody was like, oh, we see you drive by and you're like focused, not wanting to talk to anybody. I was like, I'm scared. I said, because if this doesn't work, that first year, that was Radar and I's money.
Was
Like
it
it
the
was
same
no
location? You've always been at the same
yeah,
location?
same location. And we knew early on by all the people that we talked to, everybody told us, and plus we've seen it with our own eyes. When events move from location to location, they die.
Yeah.
So we knew we had to pick a location where we could at least grow into if we needed to. I never thought that we would outgrow it.
How
You know,
many
figured
how many vehicles you have that first year?
first year I was scared we weren't even going to get anybody, but we ended up getting 600 vehicles that first year.
Wow.
And 600 is no if hell you've done shows,
I think
600
350-ish is the most I've ever had. And I thought
and
that was huge.
yeah, and that's the thing. 600 cars, that's a big park. So 600, even when I look back on it, and it's like it wasn't many. Like you think about 600, it's not that much. But when
Did you use the whole grounds or did you
we
short?
we had the same thing that we had now, but we didn't use any of the buildings. So
Okay.
we didn't use the pavilion, we didn't use the expo center, the arena, we didn't use exhibit 1, exhibit 2, we didn't use the festival area. Like it wasn't all of that, but the whole grounds itself we did use.
So it probably still looked thin even with 600 vehicles.
It was very thin. And that's what, I look back onto it now and where we have, because we do 2,000 now. And then that's just through regular registration. I do 500 just through vendor. And then you have display vehicles with vendors, and then you have vendor vehicles, and then you have some of our vehicles. So, we knew the year that Gas Monkey did their episode out there, that year we had 3,400 cars
That
and
was 16?
16, and
Yeah,
we
I was
knew
there
that
that year.
we knew that wasn't going to work. 3,400 cars is not going to
It
work.
was packed that year.
It was packed, and it was a complete nightmare. And again, we learned a lot from that year. I mean, I still say even 24, this past event, we learned something every year. I never say now, I never say we got that figured out or we got this fixed because something else is going to come up. But I do believe that we have a good group of staff members and people that are a part of what I call the LST family or the LST team.
Yeah.
If I want everybody to be a part of it and feel like a part of it, And at the end of the day, I think everybody knows that. They pride themselves on a good event. Even our officers, the Roscoe, which is Jonathan, he's the one that heads up all our officers. He's a SO for the county, and he's the one that heads up all our officers. And what I love about it is all of the officers that work the event, all of those guys are love coming and love working for the event. That's what I love. No one considers it like, oh man, I can't believe I got to work it this
They're
weekend.
car
Oh,
guys.
yes, and they're not all car guys. Some of them are, they're into like off-road vehicles, side by sides,
They're
mud
still
trucks.
gearheads.
Yeah, bike. There's two motorcycle cops that love motorcycles. They're in motorcycle clubs. You know what I mean? So it's like all of these guys are intertwined in something that we love custom.
That's what
And
I did with when I had my cops come. I had a couple buddies that worked for the county. I'm like, all right, well, you're a car guy. You go to shows, good guys, and all that stuff. You pick the guys that you want to work with you.
yeah,
So they weren't working. I mean, they were there, but they were still checking out the cars. But they were there just in case something went down.
yeah. And I look at it as this too. Brandon, you've been there, and I consider all of my friends or my people and what I consider my people. So everybody that's come to the event, I feel like if you saw something, you would correct it. You would come out and say, hey,
100%.
don't do that. Don't mess up this event. And I feel like everybody sees the vision that we have for it and know us and know what we want. And at the end of the day, we all get a little crazy. We all want to do stupid stuff, but I have to run a safe event, or it's going to go bye bye. What everybody loves to enjoy, and what I love bringing to it, because I will always do this, and I do it every year. I will always go up to the arena at between noon and 2 o'clock on Saturday, and I love looking out over the crowd. And the best part, and I'll always talk about this, I love seeing groups of people that are together at a vehicle or at a truck or at a tent, and they're having a good time. They're talking about what they just did to their truck, or I love those groups. Those groups is what we did this for. I love that. I love that the different types, and I know me and you talked about it earlier, but it was the lifted, the lowered, the hot rod, the low
Yeah.
rider, the street cars, the motorcycles. I want every group to feel like they're a part of it. I don't want it. A lot of people are like, well, I don't like it that there's so many lifted trucks. I don't like it that there's cars here. I don't like it that these lowriders are here. This isn't a lowrider show. No, this is an everyone show. I
To
want a
me,
little bit of everything.
if it's a custom vehicle, which ties into the podcast thing, if it's a modified ride, that's what's cool. Like, I'm not a lowrider guy, but I'll spend the time looking at a lowrider because the amount of work and the attention to detail that's in it. But anything that's a modified ride is what, to me, stands out. I don't care as long as it's got wheels and an engine, whether it's
Yeah,
2 wheels or 4, it don't matter. If someone's taking their time to modify that to make it their own, I'm cool with it.
yeah. And I agree with that. I love that. And I can appreciate the lowrider stuff. I've never had one. I mean, closest is the 10 switches, two pumps with the hydraulics, which, I appreciated how in depth they went with their vehicles. And still to this day, I still will say I'm a mini trucker and I'm a sport truck guy and a hot rodder, I guess, before any of the others. But I will tell you that there's no other group than the lowrider group that go all out.
Oh yeah.
Like you cannot. I appreciate everything those guys do. And when you go to one of those events and you look at those cars, that they do not play around. And I love it that some of our guys, what I consider our guys, are starting to get in the mix of it. For an example, Mike Barsha,
Yep.
when he brought his truck to Autorama in Houston, and he's up here with these grade 8 cars and rubbing elbows with the elite of the hot rod scene. And he's giving those guys a run for their money. I love that because I consider Mike Barsha one of our guys. Like
The
he's
mini
coming
truck.
in with this truck that they look at it and go, what the hell is that? That should be a 50 Mercury. You know what I mean? You should be
Yeah.
doing a 50 Mercury up here or a 55 Chevy, but he's not. Here's a crew cab dually that's fully done top to bottom. And I love that. And you see that a lot more now. You start seeing, but all of us are older now and we can afford because I always say we're the hot rodders now.
Yep.
The hot rodders
Yeah.
are old. They're selling their cars. They're getting out of it. For me, I'm not ever going to go out and get a 55 or a 48 or a 32 Ford
Or
and do
even a 69 Camaro. Like that's
no.
our parents.
Yep. And that's not me. So for me, like even though I'm a Ford guy, like for me, I'd love to do a C10, like a late 70s or early 80s because that was kind of my group of what I looked at. And you know, I can see myself doing something like that that's one off or something like that. But we're the hot rod guys now.
Well, you said so that in 16, I guess it was, you had 3,400. So I guess it was 17, you capped it at 2,000 and did the pre-registration only. And you sell out like record time every year, don't you?
Yeah, last year it was only a couple of hours, and the reason why it was a couple of hours is because our website kept crashing. But that's I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It gives me anxiety just thinking about it, but we've sold out and it's been a blessing. But then again, at the end of the day, I hate not having people that want to be a part of it not be able to. And that's what happens when it sells out so quick. You have people that came last year that didn't get a ticket. Not and I hate that. I wished
They
I
were
could.
working or sleeping or whatever at that time.
Yeah. So and I'll touch base a little bit on this, but with what happened this past event, um, we're doing registration a little bit different. So now it's going to be a submission registration.
Like Jason does at Mini Nats.
Correct. So it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to get probably some hate on it or something like that, but it's something that we have to do to make sure that the event still goes on.
But you know what though? You and the guys that like your team are car guys. So you're not gonna just be randomly just picking whatever. Like all you guys know what you're looking at. So I don't
Yep.
see that being a problem.
I just, this is my problem, and I'll go back to that where I've seen people have like because I was once that kid, Ford Ranger with just a drop kit. I don't. I want them still to come.
Yeah.
Like so for me, when we're doing these submissions, those guys are still. I'm going to still accept that. Like I don't want people to think I don't have a $250,000 bill, so I can't come. That's not the show.
How
So
nowadays a $250,000 build's a normal daily driver.
the truck's 100 grand now.
Yep.
So that's where I think, and this is something new, and this is like I said, we've had to fix things from year to year, and this is just another thing that we're going to have to work on. And will it be perfect the first year? Probably not.
But
Can we grow on it and can we make it better? Absolutely. I will tell you this. I guarantee you that if we do it again, that it will be better than the first time. We will try to build on it.
well, I know I've always, other people have too, referred to LST as like SEMA of Texas. Like the caliber of vehicles there's very few shows that you have that, but it's like I'm 16 hours away, so it's a 16-hour drive. And I got friends that's coming from Vegas, it's a 24-hour drive. And you got Canada. Like, even though Texas is kind of in the middle of the country, like you still have people that are driving, 15, 20, 30 hours to get there. like that's got to say a lot that people drive that far to your event.
Absolutely. All the people that we've had come to the event, and you know,
Australia.
oh yeah, I've had uh, Netherlands, I had Iceland, and I had Germany. I'm trying to think what the Japan. Uh,
Well,
we had
then you had the what the 1 or 2 years that Phil that makes sure awards could even come because Canada said no.
yeah. Well, what's really funny is I'll say this. It had, I guess, the effect that it had on me was the amount of people that I saw from different places come and the enjoyment that they got and being happy because after the event, I would always take it to heart. Like if something went wrong and I had, let's say, 5 people that were online bashing us, worst show ever. I'm never going to be back. I'm never going to go back. I take that to heart. I carry it all on my shoulders. I'm a people pleaser. So it was hard for me because, and even my wife, Crystal, she even told me, she was like, stop letting 5 people ruin what 30,000 people
Yeah.
love. Don't let those 5 beat you down like you're letting beat down. I think that was my hardest thing. But the biggest thing was a lot of times being on the golf cart, and she would come to me and said, "Hey, this guy wants to meet you. He's from Germany." And he comes over and he's like, "Oh my God, it's so nice to meet you." Like he is so happy to meet me. And it's like, who am I?
You're
I'm
just
just an
Lonnie.
old dude that cleans filters for a living and wanted to have a show. You know what I mean? And it's like for these guys to man, we love this show. This is amazing. And their thing is always the trucks. He was like, everybody has a truck. So I guess back at home, not a lot of people have trucks.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, these trucks, like everything's trucks. That right there makes me happy. Like I look at that, and even some of the guys from Mexico, what's so funny is the logistics that they do. Like some of the guys from Monterey, they were bringing their trucks across, keeping them at buddies' places across the border. So they would take it to the show and then they would fly in. So these guys are preparing like months in advance to have their truck across the border. So just in case they can't get their truck across at the time, they don't miss the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they'll bring it months ahead of time to bring it to the show. And I love that. I love looking at plates and going, God, that thing's from Canada or this or a New Jersey or a New York or an Oregon plate. I love that. You look at it and go, man, this is South Texas. And we
Well,
got these.
I know we've talked about it before. Like, you know, you have people bitch like, oh, it was cold this year. Oh, it rained. Or, oh, it was dusty. People that know me know I'm crazy OCD. Everything's got to be perfect and stuff. But it's like this last year, like I had, you know, Tobin washed the truck for me. You know, then I got there, I guess that was Thursday morning, wiped it down. And before I got done wiping, I realized it was already dusty. I didn't touch my truck the rest of the weekend. And some of my friends were like, your truck's dirty. I'm like, I know, but you know what? That's out of everybody's hands. I really don't care. Like I made a joke about it going home. Like you could write your name in my dash. It was so bad. And people's like, oh my God, you're so OCD. How are you dealing with that? I'm like, because I had a blast. I had probably one of the best times I've ever had at a show. Could care less. Like that's not, you know, we've been there and it's poured the rain, but
Yep.
we're still
I
there.
will I will always go back to this one too, and talking about the weather and stuff like that. We've had it to where we've had cold years, hot years, beautiful weather, dry. We've had cold, I mean, freezing cold to where
Yeah.
we couldn't buy enough propane and heaters for all our staff to stay warm. We had heaters in our glove, and we've had times that where I got sunburned and I'm burned up and I got rashes all over me from being hot and sweaty all weekend. So it's all this different weather change, but one year it was, I want to say 2022. Yeah, 22, freezing. So it is freezing, and raining. at the same time. And my wife, we're sitting on the golf cart, and I'm about to have a mental breakdown. I'm like, this is horrible. People's going to hate us. Like, I'm taking it all on, knowing that I can't do nothing about it. Because literally, I've told people, if I could suck the water out with a straw of that place, I would, but I can't.
Yep.
So there's nothing I can do, even though I would work till my fingers were bones, and it still wouldn't help. But she said, look right now, look in front of you. She goes, you have five people. So it was a husband and wife and three of their kids. And they have, the mom had an umbrella and one of the daughter had an umbrella. The kids were wrapped in blankets, smiles on their face. They were walking around looking at the trucks. It is sprinkling. It's still wet, and it is 30 degrees. It is cold, and people are still walking around. And she was like, if that doesn't make you happy, nothing's ever going to make you happy. That right there should put a smile on your face that these people are still coming out here and not only supporting you, but having a good time. She goes, they're not mad, yelling at you or anything like that. So don't take the negative that you're, because she already knows the negative I'm going to see after that. And it's always funny because some of them I know, and they'll go online bashing us, and I know the people, and they're like, we're never coming back. We're that show sucks. We're never going to go back again. Guess who I see back the next year?
Yep.
Those same people.
Yep.
So it just, you know, it is what it is. I can't change it. This year was the driest year we ever had. And I love it that everybody wants to blame the monster truck for the dust. But it's like, no, this is a 138 acres of dry as hell grounds. It's going to be dusty. You got
Yep.
you have, with registration, vendors, and everything, you have 5,000 vehicles driving around here. It's going to be dusty. I had one of the guys. He stopped me and he was like, "Man, what are you going to do about this dust?" And I was like, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "Do you want it to rain?" I said, "Because I'd much rather have this dust than the rain.
Yep.
At least with the dust, we're not worried about parking in mud and stuff like that, which we've dealt with several years. But at the end of the day, I tell everybody, there's 100% of LST. Just go have a good time. Make it what it is. Go around, talk to all of you people. There's so many people from all over the place. A lot of times you don't get to see a lot of these vehicles, and you talking about the SEMA thing. I've heard a lot of people talk about they love it because you actually get the vehicles that still aren't driving at SEMA, they're driving at LST.
Yep. They've had a
You
couple
get to
more
see
months to get finished.
yeah, because they always say LST is where you get to see the SEMA vehicles finished.
Now I'm opposite of that norm because every SEMA vehicle I've done, this is my 9th placement going this year, and every one of them has been done before the show. So, I mean, I
But
try to
but
not.
but you've been around enough to know that a lot of them are.
So I guess if you said the garage gear started during the LST or after the
Yeah,
LST deal, so how
yeah.
tell
So
us about
after
garage
LST
gear?
is going on, a good friend of us, a friend of ours, Micah, he started Garage Gear. So he had moved to Vegas and really wasn't doing anything with Garage Gear. I at that time wore Garage Gear shirts because I supported Micah. He was in our truck club and all that stuff, and I loved the logo.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the logo just had me because it has that old gas station type kind of feel, and I love the name Garage Gear. So he wasn't doing it. Kind of, he let it go off. He let the website go back, and he only had like a few totes of like shirts, and he had wanted to sell it, and Todd and I kind of went back and forth with it. And at that time, my wife had recently lost her job. And we were sitting there, and we're like, you know what? We ought to buy Garage Gear and see what we can do. We're going to all of these shows. Crystal can come with us. She can kind of spearhead this thing and try to make, because it's turned into my wife's LST, like her child.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Garage Gear is all about, like, if you've been to Garage Gear, she's the person that runs Garage Gear. She is the one that makes that thing run. So we ended up going to SEMA and we met Micah there, or we went to his house, and that's where we finalized the deal. We bought Garage Gear, and then when we came back, we literally only bought a name and uh, 4 designs, and we started it back up. We got the website back. We started a Facebook, and just we didn't have Brandon at this time. We didn't have a tent. We didn't have tablecloth. We didn't have. We ended up the first show that we had. We had a blue Academy tent, a table, and like 4 totes, clear totes, with some t-shirts and hats. That's all we had.
Now you
And
are
then,
balling out with a big old trailer and
and it's the beauty of it is Todd and I both initially funded it, so we knew to get it going, we're gonna have to put money in it.
yeah,
I mean, to get it going, it is. I love when people look at like a design and they're like, "Oh, you ought to need to do a 2013 Charger," and I'm like, I look at 2013 Charger, what color? Purple. Okay, that's $3,600. Like, I look at the design,
yeah.
buying enough shirts, having the inventory, having a place for it. Like, I'm looking in my head, counting the money, 4,000, 4,000. Yeah, we don't have that kind of money. You have to gradually grow, and that's what we did. We went from a Academy 10 by 10 tent to a Garage Gear tent, 10 by 10. Then we went to a 10 by 20. And then we went to a trailer with a 10 by 20 outside of it. Then we outgrew the trailer. Well, really, at that point, we got a longer trailer because we started with like a 18-foot, 24, and then we got a 34. And then, but I had my truck because at that point my truck was done and I wanted to take my truck.
Yeah.
So once Garage Gear grew so much that my truck is in the back of the trailer. And when I say there's a wall of totes, it's in front of the trailer. And then at that point, we're starting to stack like in the cab of the truck totes and the bed of the truck totes. So we wanted to get a vending trailer. And really where that comes from too is setting up. People don't realize how much work it is and why people get a vending trailer. They're like, oh, they just want to, show off having a like a vending trailer. No, that saves so much time and so much work.
Tent, the tables,
Oh,
the
you don't realize weather, and where it sold me was we go to mini nats, and you got, and I will give credit to like Drop 'em, Driven, KIK, like all of those people have hammered. They have vending trailers. We're there at mini nats, and we're sitting in the truck. It's pouring ass rain, and I'm looking, they're all opened up selling. We can't sell because I can't put out my merchandise because it'll all get wet.
yeah,
So we're in the truck just sitting there watching them. And I told my wife, I told Crystal, I was like, we have to get a vending trailer. Like, we just have to. This is the deciding factor that we need one for this because in 2019, out of all the events that we went to, all the events we had all but 2 shows rain for all of 2019. It was the rainiest season, and it was all through the year. It wasn't like a certain part of the year. Every event we went to an event on the East Coast, not the West Coast, but we went to Daytona. We went to North Carolina. We went to Alabama, Mississippi. Every show rained. And it was at the point where it's like we gotta fix this. And plus, some of the events that are 3 days long, like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you got to imagine we set up and tear down every day.
yep,
So you set up, tear down every day. When I'm driving home, I'm so wore out because you get in the truck to drive home, you're soaking wet, you're hot, you're tired, you're sweaty. You get in the truck, and we got a 12-hour, 14-hour drive back home. If it's, the Florida one or the other one, it's 20 plus hours coming back home. So it's just the vending trailer was the way to go, and that's a whole nother thing. But we ended up getting that vending trailer, and I absolutely love it. Like it looks good. I hate it that we're not, because I'm a more of a people person. So I like being in a tent, being face to face with someone. Where the vending trailer, it's just you're just there.
Yeah.
You're looking down at. They can only come up. People have to come up to the trailer to look at the designs on the trailer, and I liked it where someone could just walk by and see all of our stuff, see our hats, the straw hats, see the t-shirts, the designs, and that brings them in. Well, right now they have to come up to see it.
Yeah. So, what brought your new show on, your classic truck throwdown? Because this is your second year now.
Yeah, this is the second year. The first year, last year, we started this one for Jared, and really, and I hate to say for Jared, but Jared, we brought on Jared. He was one of our vendors at LST, and he was doing Adams um, detail polishing stuff,
Yeah.
and he would set up a booth, and he was the Adams guy for LST, and he got to the point where he was going to stop doing it, and we kind of met up. We crossed paths a few times. He's Jared. If you've ever met Jared,
I think so.
okay, so he's also he's a good dude, and he was like, "Hey, you want me to help you out with some vendor stuff?" And I took it as, I don't want to like, yeah, come over here and help, but he wanted to help, and I looked at it as he was a vendor. So he's been to all these events. He could bring a different side to this. At this point, we still weren't really doing a lot of garage gear yet. So I had never seen the vendor side of it. So he stopped doing Adams. And that's why at LST, at the vendor gate, we always had at the vendor gate those first few years, always had an Adams tent. That was because that was his tent before we started having to get the big rental tents. And Jared came on, and he really just fine tuned our vendor side. So it got to a point where LST is Radar and I, and we give Jared 10% of LST.
Okay.
He's still not an owner, but at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, Jared gets 10% of what's left over at the end. So that's his incentive to come in and help for LST.
Yeah.
So he does a tremendous job. If you do anything through the vendor side, it's going to be Jared or my wife. And he had always talked about wanting to do a classic truck show. And we hauled around back and forth. Yeah, we ought to do this. We ought to do this. So we were supposed to have one in 2020. And so the beginning of Classic Truck Throwdown is Radar, myself, and Jared. Just like Radar and I did LST, we go, we get a formation, we get an LLC, we set it up because we all have businesses outside of there and want to protect our
Yeah.
main businesses. So we go in, we do it right, we set it all up, and just like LST, it seems weird that both of them are the same way. But we're supposed to have the show in 2020, and COVID hits. And it scares the hell out of me because I don't know what my business is going to do.
No one.
So, yeah, so it's like I couldn't hang my neck out for a first year show and it belly up, and it cost me money, and I'm losing money on my main business. So we didn't have it in 2020. And it got to the point where 21 rolled around, 22 rolled around, and we're paying. And most people probably don't realize, even if you don't make any money with the business, you still have to pay for having a business.
Yep.
You
I,
still
I
have
I
to
didn't
file your tax
realize when I
return.
did my LLC the first of 22, I didn't realize that you had to renew the LLC every year, and I got a
And your
notification.
franchise tax, you gotta
Yep.
pay someone to do all of that, and that's so we're paying this money out and not having the show. So it rolls around, 22 rolls around, and Jared was like, "Look, we got to shit or get off the pot. Let's do the event, see what happens." So that's what we ended up doing. 23 was our first event. We had 500, almost 560 cars,
Same
and
location as LST.
same location as LST. And to tell you the truth, I really enjoy the classic truck one. You can't compare the two. LST is just its own beast.
Oh yeah.
Classic truck, I feel it has a different. Classic truck is a slower pace. It is a different crowd. It's not as packed, so I look at it as I had more fun, but it's definitely a less people. So with less people, lets me able to have a little bit of more free time and enjoy myself where I'm not pulled from 10 million different
Yeah.
directions. So we had the first event 23, and when it's all said and done, was it like, oh my god, it's the best thing ever. The drawback to it is the expense of it. It is almost like doing an LST expense, but not with the money that generates from LST. So it was a little scary to go into it because none of us got paid, nothing. And not saying that I have to get something out of it, but at the end of it, I look at it as this: if we can do it and we can do it again, I'm okay with that because this isn't my main business.
Yeah.
Everybody, I encourage everybody whenever I hear people like, "Oh, I want to do a show," it's not easy. And anybody that has done a show for more than one time, that's done it a few times, will tell you, just like you will say, it is not easy. It
Nope.
is hard, hard, hard. And but the vision that I have for it is you keep working at it, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But if everybody quit at it, there would be no shows.
That people see it as, oh, you just worked that weekend. Like, you didn't see the 14 months that I have invested for that weekend. Like, I
Yep.
start like just like everybody, you start a couple months before the first show to be able to have the next one together.
And even with like, especially LST, the next event for LST is already in the works before
Yep.
the previous one goes. You know what I mean? So before you even get to that next one, you're already getting your logos, getting all of your stuff, getting ready to send out to get it rolling because you have to be on top of it.
Yep. So what's next for the Lonnie Ford world? Like, where do you see you going? Is there something else we're working on? Or are we just going to stick with LST and classic truck and garage gear?
No, I'm definitely I have worn myself thin. I turned 50 this year. So there's going to be no more shows like this. I never thought I'd ever do another one, but here we are with two of them. But don't want to do another show. These two are our babies. We're trying to grow Classic Truck Throwdown. It's going in the right direction. I can't wait for next weekend because I am looking forward to it. And with garage gear and stuff like that, my main focus right now is my business. I clean industrial filters for a living. So with me, that is my main focus. And all of this other stuff is great, but so much of it, even with garage gear and these two shows, it takes a lot from me.
Yeah.
Where sometimes I don't get to enjoy what I used to enjoy without that, where I could just go to someone else's show. Because I still love to go to other people's shows.
Yeah.
I still enjoy it. But it's just, we're either working at someone else's show or we're bringing vehicles to someone else's show or I'm at work or we're doing our own show.
Well, like me and you talked at Mini Nats this year. Like that was the first time I was at a show that I didn't quote unquote work
Yeah.
in a long time. And it felt so weird because it's like I'm used to busting my ass every show, 2, 3, 4 weekends a month. But it was kind of cool to kind of sit back and chill and hang out with friends and BS with everybody. So I couldn't imagine having two shows and a booth at every show. Yeah, it's a little much. So
Yeah, it gets a lot, but I feel like my focus on is just keeping what we have here. I have nothing in the world. I wanna finish my projects that I have going, which are my two F100s, and then just continue to move forward and grow the classic truck one. I'd love to grow. I would love for it to be like an LST one day, just because. Not saying I want it to be bigger than LST, but I want it to be as in enough people to enjoy classic truck because it is a good event.
yeah. So how do people find you? I know you've got multiple pages and channels and all that. So give us the breakdown on how people find
Yep.
you and the
So
companies you deal with.
for LST, it's LoneStarThrowdown.com. Garage Gear is GarageGearClothing.com, and Classic Truck is ClassicTruckThrowdown.com.
And I guess the same names carry over for Instagram and Facebook and everything.
Correct. Yeah. Facebook, Instagram, all of that. It's Classic Truck Throwdown, Lone Star Throwdown, and Garage Gear Clothing.
So when does the 2020, what year is this? So it'll be 2020.
2025
Yeah. So when does 2025 LST registration open up?
is going to registration. We're going to go live in August, and it is going to be a submission type um, deal. We have we've played around with it right now. It seems to work really well of
Okay.
how we're going to set it up, where you could submit pictures and submit all of your information, but it's just going to take time because you got to realize it's probably only going to be a few people that are looking at these and trying to go through 2,000 registrations, and that's just saying 2,000 that we accept.
Are
You
you
still got to
opening
figure
up?
out how many people's going to do it.
You open it up earlier than normal, or is that about the time you usually open it up for?
We always open it up August 1st, but what
Okay.
we're going to do is we're going to start it and just let it go probably August 1st or whatever, and just let people submit it. And we go through the submissions.
Okay. Well, definitely look forward to that one. Like I said, it's always been one of my favorite shows just because the amount of caliber there, the indoor stuff, the lifted stuff, the import stuff. And that's still probably a couple of my favorite trophies. I've brought home a top, I think it was 50 and 16 when I was there with the Tundra. Um, then we went back with the Subaru and it got best import. Then another year it got best female ride. And those are still probably some of the heaviest trophies I think I have sitting in my garage. So
Yeah, Phil does an amazing job, and I don't think we touched base on Phil, but Phil, when we first started LST, we were just doing some little cutout metal pieces. I think there's one at the very top if you could see that. So
yeah,
that's just a cleared piece of metal that just
plastic
has a
stuff, yeah.
logo, and that's how we started out, and we were kind of our paths crossed. We met Phil, and Phil does amazing work. And my vision was, I showed him one of the Boyd trophies that I had got back at the old sport truck shows back in the 90s, and then we looked at that, and I was like, I want something like this. Like this, everybody was wanting this award,
Yeah.
and this was the baddest award that you could probably get, and they're even numbered. And on that award, I told him, I don't want you to copy it, but I want you to do your twist on it. I want to do our twist. I want to have the LST, but have like an old Derek type looking award. And then that's when Phil set up with that one. And if you ever get a chance, and I know you've held some of them, they are no joke. Like it
I,
is.
I
I
think the
love
ones that
watching
we
people.
have are 11 and a half pounds per trophy.
Yeah, yeah, they're no joke. I love people's reactions when they grab them for the first time,
Oh,
and they grab it.
I'll
And they're
pull
like,
one off the cabinet. Somebody will be by the house, and like I have two different cabinets in the garage, and all the trophies are on it. And they're like, "Oh, what is that one?" I'm like, "Let me get that one down." And I'm like trying not to show my face on how heavy it is with one hand. I hand it to them, and they're like, "Oh my god, that thing is the heaviest trophy I've ever picked up." I was like, "Yep, it's kind of cool. We have two of them back to back, so that
yeah.
was well worth it."
And I love it that Phil also takes. I mean, you could see how these are like little babies to him. Like
Oh
he's
yeah,
giving up his children. Like I love that he takes so much pride in it, and that's what I love about LST is everyone in LST has so much pride in what they do. And I love that. I love that he takes it. It's just like with these little keychains. I have one of the, the classic truck keychains
yeah.
here, and just the detail work in this keychain from him. I mean, it's just this is. I mean, I love this stuff, and I love that he enjoys it, and we're able to strike it up. And that's even what I told him about Classic Truck. I was like, look, if you can't do the awards for this, we're not doing the show. So you have to do the awards for it. And then he even told me, because he just recently bought the company that he works for or that he used to work for. So he owns it now.
Oh wow.
And, and he even told me, he was like, don't start another show because I'm not doing any more awards. Your two shows are the only awards that I'm doing now.
I know his
So
awards have set the bar for what like the best of the best in the industry are. Like I think I know you guys spend a ton of money on it, but it also sets that apart. Even the little top 50 I got in 16, like that's still a super cool trophy. So it's not just a piece of plastic, it's not a piece of
and
acrylic, it's something substantial.
and even on like the best of show, which he considers Bay,
Yeah.
the best of show award. Every time someone wins that, I always laugh because I was like, you do know that's a used Toyota Camry, right? Like that costs as much as a used Toyota Camry. Go look up a used Toyota Camry right now, and that'll tell you how much just the best of show. But when you see that award, I mean, it's no punk. Like it, I want someone when they leave that is something that they would cherish forever because that's what I want. I want in when I'm dead and gone from this place that people still look back at that and say, "Man, do you remember LST?" That's what I want. I
Well,
want to just be remembered that, and people don't forget about it and they think about all the good times because everything goes up and everything comes down. So at some point, will LST last forever? Who knows?
Well, it's like you go back through some of my old podcasts, like, when Chris from MTI was on, he had three of the bays, sitting
Yeah,
behind him. And then Eddie Gordy had all his,
yeah,
17,000 LST awards sitting behind him. So seems to be a theme. I guess you're the third one with all the awards behind you on the video.
yeah.
So
Well, you take Chris's episode with the three behind them, and you could probably get one and a half brand new Toyota Camry. So
I hate to even see what shipping is to ship them from Canada to Texas. Like
it's not that bad.
that's
We use
my body.
FedEx, and I'm always the nervous one because we just received the Classic Truck Awards, and I'm a nervous wreck
And that's a
because
week before.
I'm thinking about how much not only how much money is there, but we need those. Like they can't get lost or some shit like that. We need those awards.
Stuck in customs for an extra month or something.
And luckily he's done it so much that he knows the paperwork to fill out and everything because the first couple of years customs kept it for a long time, and I'm sure when they x-rayed that thing they're trying to figure out what the hell
Yeah.
is this, especially when in the middle of it is where he puts the best of show. So it's in the middle. So it probably looks like some kind of nuclear bomb or something in that crate.
Do you know how much the pallet weighs when he ships the LST stuff? That should be a question.
I want to say it's a couple thousand pounds
Wow. Of just trophies.
of just trophies.
Wow. Well, it's definitely cool to have you on, man. You've
I
got
appreciate it.
a story to pass for sure with a lot going on currently. So thanks for making time to sit down and go over all this. I definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we answered a lot of questions if people even had questions. And like you said, getting to know who I am. I'm definitely an open book. I've been around for a long time, and I'm just not. Everybody thinks I just do LST, and it's like, no, I've done a lot of other stuff before LST. It's just a lot more people know me from LST, and but I'm just a guy that cleans industrial filters. That's who I am deep down inside. That is my bread and butter.
Yeah. Well, definitely appreciate you coming in or coming on. Good luck with the show this coming weekend. So hopefully numbers turn out, weather works out, and you're already planning on the next year before the show's over.
Yep, we're ready for it. I appreciate you having me.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
All right, bye.